What's it? Where am I? Oh Jesus! How long was I out? How long has it been since new cards came out? God, what have I been doing this whole time?
Peridot? You feeling any better?
Well, anyway, let's get right back into it. This is Pack 1 of the Kitara Cycle, Sovereign Sight. Woo! Alright, first up is this thing. By any means. This is a whopping 5 influence card, 2 to play, priority event. Play it as your first click because it's priority. Until this turn ends, whenever you access a card that's not in archives, trash it at no cost, even if it cannot normally be trashed, and suffer 1 meat damage. So this is actually a pretty interesting card, and flavor-wise, this is absolutely like one of the most anarchist, whatever word you want to use. It's the most orange card that we've seen in a while. So this is obviously a very, very powerful effect, but you also stab yourself in the face repeatedly for doing it. This card, while it is super tempting to throw into a deck just to try out the raw power of being able to trash things repeatedly like that, it's not going to be as all-purpose as you might think. It's definitely very, very strong against asset spam. This is absolutely an anti-asset spam card because you can play it, run 3 things, and just blow them all up at no cost. And then you have to take 3 damage, but if you're Anarch, you have Heat Breakers, if I had worse, you'll be okay. However, you have to ask yourself the question, is that better or worse than just playing Scrubber and getting a similar effect for the same 2 to play that doesn't keep punching yourself? And most of the time, I'm probably actually going to go with Scrubber. I'd rather do that. And if you're going to use this to run HQ or R&D, if you want to use this just to try to hit HQ 3 times, it's distinctly better to just use Wanton Destruction. It's 1 less to play, it's the same pass your entire turn, trash the same 3 cards at HQ, but with Wanton Destruction you only have to make 1 run, not 3. However, what this card is definitely specifically for is the emo masochistic, self-damage Clanarch deck. That is what this is for. If you're not using this to just shred assets left and right, then this is best to use hitting R&D over and over again, trashing a bunch of cards off the top of R&D, and then immediately popping Clan Vengeance or Officer Frake to also make the Corp pitch pretty much their entire hand into the bin as well. And if you can pull that off, that is a devastating combo. So that is terrifying to mill 3 off the top and then also chuck 3 or more cards out of your hand as the Corp at the same time. That is a huge tempo swing in the runner's favor. So in that specific deck, this is a big combo piece that it was probably waiting for. Well, I guess Vanadis Armory was that, but we all know what happened to that card. So if you were the one degenerate douchebag who actually liked playing that deck, here is the next best thing. Have fun. And if you really like the Clanarch thing, then this is definitely up your alley. So this, I don't know if it's enough to bring that self-damage deck style into higher tiers, but it's definitely a new toy for them to play with. Now, after that, we've got yet another Anarch Fractor that isn't Paperclip. So this is Yosef. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm going to call it Yosef. This is a 2 influence, 1 to install, 2 MU. It's a Fractor and a virus. It's 3 strength. Whenever you make a successful run, you may place a virus counter on it, take a virus counter off any card, break a barrier sub, take a virus counter off any card plus 1 strength. So this is a super awkward card, like in terms of design. Like it's interesting, and it is definitely going into deep into the whole virus theme that this cycle's supposed to have. It's just weird. Now, there are a couple of big fat things to point out about this card, though. I mean, one, the 1 to install 3 base strength is ridiculous, but that's balanced out by the 2 MU. But then again, everyone's running like Maw and stuff, so that shouldn't be a big deal. However, the biggest asset to this fractor is that it's a fractor that does not take money to break at all. If you can supply this card with virus counters, you can break any barrier for no money. And that is something that kind of scares me, because Yogg being able to break for no money is bad. I mean, this is nowhere near as powerful as Yogg, obviously, but therein lies the potential that if something is figured out to snowball this too hard, it could get oppressive. However, because it's virus counters and virus counters can be purged, that probably isn't going to happen. Like this, it's not only that you can do it without money, you have to do it without money. You could have 1,000,000 credits and no virus counters, and this is worthless. Plus, you have to make successful runs to put counters on it, but if you don't have any counters on it, you can't make successful runs. So, it's got issues. This will not. The thing about this card is that unlike something like Amakua, which you can like build up to getting powerful, and then even if they purge, you can get it back up again, like even getting something like a vanilla. This can't really power itself. Like you get 1 counter per run on using this thing. It's not good enough to power itself. You need probably more than one other thing with virus counters on it in order for this to be even usable, for this to be feasible at all. You need multiple other things that provide virus counters. Now, once you have that, things like virus breeding ground or an Amakua or data suckers, this would be a good reason to run multiple data suckers at a time. Then this can become really scary, because if you can fuel this, it's ridiculous. But again, virus counters can be purged if someone manages to put some ice down and then purges virus counters. What do you do? Even if you've got things that build up counters of return like virus breeding grounds, you still have to wait a couple of turns before you can really get this going again. So even though it has the theoretical potential to be really, really scary and snowballing and possibly oppressive, I think that's very unlikely to happen, just because of how many other pieces it takes just to make this functional. Like, not just to make it awesome, just to make it functional. This takes multiple other pieces. And, as Danny D would say, it's like, why not just play a regular fractor and money cards? Like, why not just have paperclip and money cards rather than this specific virus-only fractor and, 8 other virus cards? So, I mean, this cycle is supposed to be super virus heavy. There might be something else that comes out that supports this and makes this more viable. Again, as I said, this is another fractor that, it is kind of interesting. It's not paperclip. So, now for Crim cards, we've got a new console. This is Samba. It's 4 to install, 3 influence, plus 2 MU. Whenever a corp card is exposed, you may gain a credit. So, in the absence of Desperado, not only has Criminal been getting a lot of consoles lately, they've also been getting a buttload of plus 2 MU consoles. Like there's Gauntlet, there's Maui, and now there's this. They've been getting a lot of plus 2 MU consoles. But this is very, very obviously supposed to be the console for the new Criminal Runner ID that's coming up in Pack 4. So the character whose name is 419, this is very, very, very clearly his console. It works hand in hand with his ID ability. So I think I'd rather wait until he comes out for to go into depth about the obvious synergy with that. Because for right now, we just have the console. So for right now, this isn't really going to be doing much, except maybe trying to be fit into a smoke deck somewhere. So like, I can definitely see people trying to fit this into smoke for the time being. It's an effect that lets you get a credit every time something happens, so it is a console that gets you money. I mean, it's not Desperado, but it is a console that gets you money. So maybe we'll see people experimenting with this a little bit, but I don't expect this taking off until the new criminal ID comes out. Once that happens, I'll expect to see it a lot, but until then, like, this is half a puzzle piece. I'll wait till he comes out before I really go into this card. And now, as my cat climbs into my lap and up my chest and refuses to leave for any reason, let's go back to the next card in the video. Now, this is definitely an interesting card. This is Puffer. It's 4 to install, it's 1 MU, it's a killer, it's 4 influence, this is a big one, 2 strength, credit break a sub, 2 credits plus 1 strength, so it's got the starting femme fatale numbers, and then the interesting thing is click, place a power counter on it, or take a power counter off of it. Its strength and memory cost are increased by 1 for each power counter on it. So, Michael Boggs has mentioned more than once in his various interviews with the community that he really wanted to make more cards that use power counters. And this is very clearly fulfilling that prophecy. It also does something that I've wanted Netrunner to do recently, is just have better killers for criminal, rather than like, really stupid crap like Golden and Lustig that's just crazy expensive. Is have something, a little more solid and more reliable in faction for criminal. I mean, Mongoose is fine, but it has a massive drawbacks. This one is awkward. This is a really, really awkward card, but I kind of like it. The big comparison to draw with this one is functionally similar to Nanotech in a lot of ways. They're both killers. They're both 4 to install. They're both 1 MU. They're both 1 to break a sub, but crappy boosting ratios. But they both have a mechanic that constantly increases the base strength of the icebreaker somehow. In Nanotech's case, it's how many pieces of ice are on that server. And in both cases, their minimum strength is 2. For Puffer, it's how many power counters you put on it, which then increases how much MU it takes up. So the big question here is, when Nanotech only costs 1 influence, why would you play Puffer over Nanotech? Unless you're literally using up every single one of your influence for other stuff, why would you use Puffer over Nanotech when it's only 1 influence? There's some debates there. Now, one thing this also does point out is that this, and also I guess Tapworm, but definitely this, is a big explanation for why all the crims have been getting those 2 MU consoles I was talking about, is that you can shove that spare MU into this thing. So if you can free up the spare MU to buff this to like a couple extra strength, then this could be a very, very effective killer for criminals to use. But obviously you have to put it in the right deck. This does not belong in every criminal deck. So then the question then becomes, what type of criminal deck do you put this in? Do you just have a bunch of extra MU sitting around that you just devote to pumping into this? Or is this, I think what might be a better use is put this in a deck that has things like Fairy and Tapworm in it. So then you just have this as like your 1 permanent killer icebreaker to go alongside Fairy, because you normally have to leave MU open to put Fairies and Tapworms down, and then like in the late game when you're tap rooms have all been purged away, and you're out of fairies, you can take that extra MU that was you using for those and just dump it onto Puffer and just stay puffed for the rest of the game. And that is a tempting idea. Now, even if you the other question that this card brings up is how much base strength do you actually need? So this is going to be a very meta-dependent card. If this is even 2 MU, you put 1 counter on it, it's a mimic that can be boosted. That costs 2 MU, and that's not bad. The benchmark for big sentries is Ichi 1. I think we can all agree on that. Like the trademark, this is a big sentry card, is Ichi 1.0. So 4 strength is like the magic number where you can get through just about anything. So there are very few sentries with more than 4 strength. So if you can free up 3 MU to put this thing at 4 strength, that should deal with just about anything you encounter. So rather than having like trying to make some kind of weird like Overmind spin-off deck that has like 10 extra MU or something, that's something you could do with this, make a weird Overmind deck. It would probably be better to try to free up just like 1 or 2 extra MU, because like even though this has a potential to be like a 10 strength killer or something, most of the time you're only going to need like 3, maybe 4. So I'm definitely interested. It's a very weird, very awkward card, kind of like how Yosef was before. The big comparison with this one is this or Nanotech. But I do as awkward as it is, I do kind of like Puffer, and I'm hoping it finds a place. I'm honestly hoping that this card finds a place somewhere. I do like what it's trying. I don't know if it'll succeed, but I like what it's trying. I hope this finds a home. And last for Crim today, we've got Louis Guilherme. This is a unique 0-cost resource, another 4 influence card. When your turn begins, either lose a credit or trash him, and the corp's maximum hand size is reduced by 1. And this is another interesting card. Yeah, one thing this cycle was promising was new ways for Criminal to put pressure on the corpse, and this definitely does that. I think this card might be more powerful than people initially give it credit for. Now, the lose a credit each turn to keep it out is definitely a huge downside. But even if you're just clicking for credits to get that credit, this is still like lose a credit or lose a click each turn to vice grip the corpse hand size, which late game could still be worth it. The hand size reduced by 1 doesn't sound like a lot, at least from the runner side, because runners take brain damage and can kind of play like that. But I think we all know that the corpse maximum hand size being reduced by even a single card has a much, much different effect on them, because that makes it that much easier for the corpse hand to get flooded. So, and if you're Criminal, you have HQ access to get those nice juicy cards, or it makes them pitch them into archives where you can go get them, or just toss other stuff they want. So I don't think we'll see this everywhere, but I think this card might be like a missing piece to a puzzle to make a certain handful of decks better or finally viable. Like the 2 decks I see this in are in Gang Signs Leela, or any Gang Signs deck, but that pretty much means Gang Signs Leela. This could definitely be a nice card to add on to that. Or what it could also do with is Laramie decks. Lots of people have been trying to get like flood-style Laramie decks to work, and for him to be like, the first, and I guess basically only, like real deck that uses that flood play style, where you just put like way too many cards in the corpse hand and they can't handle it, and that's your whole game plan, and that's never been coherent enough of a strategy to be like really good, but it is a different, unique, interesting strategy, and this might be like the missing combo piece that Laramie needed, because this makes all of his effects noticeably more powerful. Like for other decks, it might be a nice thing to have, but for Laramie Flood decks in particular, this single-handedly makes everything else in the deck better. Like this just single-handedly improves every Laramie Fisk style card. That's definitely something I'd like to look into and I'd like to test out, is just how good this card can be. So it's definitely a new thing we've got. It definitely helps criminals put pressure on the court more. As of right now, criminals don't have the econ they should, so that losing a credit each turn is a bigger downside than it probably should be. But I'm definitely welcoming this card. It would be really interesting to see if people can actually make Laramie Fisk decks work. I will definitely try to do that myself, and I welcome this card. This is a nice add-on. All right, then for cards for green people, we have Cyber Delia, which is a hardware, 3 influence, 3 to install. It gives you +1 MU, and it says the first time you break all subroutines on a piece of ice each turn, gain a credit. So you'll notice that I didn't say this was a console, and that's confusing even me, because this sounds remarkably like a console. I'm actually confused as to why this isn't a console. It may as well be one. And on top of that, it's not just any console. This sounds an awful lot like a Shaper version of Desperado. Same install cost, influence, the MU gets money. It sounds an awful lot like a Shaper version of Desperado. Like I'm legitimately confused why it's not a console. That means it's not unique, which means you can actually stack these, which is not only going to give you a bunch of money every time when you break a piece of ice, it's also going to give you a bunch of free MU sitting around to do stuff with. It also means that you can then put down some other thing that is a console. So now, while I did compare it to Desperado, like a Shaper version of Desperado, it's going to be like on the other end of things, whereas Desperado was like a lot of quick early money and momentum, getting a credit while running. This is more of a late game type of engine. This is more of the late game lock kind of thing. Because if you've got a couple of these things down, not only is that a bunch of other MU for you to put down, install your other answers to other problems like clot and misdirection and all that stuff, but this means each turn you can break a piece of ice for significantly less money. So if you've got all 3 of these down, that may as well read that you can break a piece of ice for free each turn, because you break it and you get 3 credits back. So that, yeah, this is definitely like something that helps Shapers establish the late game lock and the late game econ. It might be good in smoke because you can just use stealth credits on things. This could be a way you could use this with or in lieu of a console in smoke as a way to like turn your stealth credits into real credits. That's probably worth experimenting with. I mean, if you play these, you definitely want 3, and 3 of these either as your console or alongside your console is going to take some deck slots. So I'm not entirely sure where this fits, but this has to go somewhere. This is too useful of a card to not go somewhere. After that, we've got this other little thingamabob called Appiah, or Appiah. If it's pronounced Appiah, there's got to be some kind of dad joke sitting in there, like "What's Appiah" or something like that. Like I'm sorry, it happens. But anyway, it's 0 to install. It's 1 MU. It's 3 influence. It says whenever you make a successful run on R&D, you may place 1 counter on it, and click 3 counters. Gain 2 clicks, use this ability only once per turn. So this is basically a program version of All-Nighter. You have to make 3 successful runs to get its ability, but it does stay out all the time. I mean, you can say, if you were a deck that would use All-Nighter and Hyperdriver and things like that, this might be something worth considering, because you can just put 1 in the deck and fetch it with SMC or something, or toss it early and clone ship it back out. It's another power counter card that Bogg was talking about. The art's really nice. Honestly, like this, it's all-nighter. Like it would do well in a deck that would use All-Nighter, but when's the last time you saw a deck that did that? So maybe someone will find a use for this, but it's probably not going a lot of places. At least not until Hyperdriver rotates. So for the last runner card in this pack, you may have expected a neutral card, but it was Apex. And this card was not even properly spoiled because, well, let's be honest, it's an Apex card. And this is just yet another step in Apex's eternal struggle to become anything other than one of the worst IDs in the entire game. This card is a simulator. I have been told on the forums it is a 5 to install resource, and it's a virtual resource, so we can play it, and its ability is 2 clicks, turn one of your face-down installed cards face up. If that card's an event, trash it, and I do not actually know how much influence it is, but I'm going to suspect it's like 3 or 4. But this is clearly intended for exactly one thing, and that is to help you recover from apocalypsing. And that's a good thing. It's definitely something that Apex can use. I would hope that there's enough influence on it that you can't just splash into any other deck that uses Apocalypse, but Apocalypse takes a ton of influence anyway. But it's an expensive card to play, but it does allow you to recover much, much better from Apocalypse. However, what it also does is that it allows you to use Apex's ability to put cards face down and then spend 2 clicks to turn them face up, and then they're whatever they were. So this also does an important thing where it lets Apex in particular cheat cards out for super cheap. So it's almost kind of sort of like an Eliza's toy box for him, because you can put some ridiculous big fat card down like a torch or whatever. Okay, that rotated, but you get the idea. You could put some super expensive program or hardware or something like that down in the field, and then just 2 clicks flip it up and save all that money from actually installing it. It might be a little better than I'm giving it credit for, because specifically in Apex it does allow you to just cheat stuff out, but then of course you have to be playing really big fat stuff, which means that you need this card specifically in order to get them out, or you need a buttload of money, and Apex is not great at getting money because you can only play virtual resources and yada yada yada. It's a thing, it's something, it's a nice thing, I'm glad he has it, but there are still many, many, many more steps to go before Apex is anything that is not really, 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 really bad. But keep trying, Apex. We love you. So next, let's start off the Corp cards with the first new identity of the Kitara Cycle, and that's ASA Group. It says a 4515, it says the first time you install a card each turn, you may install an additional non-agenda card from HQ in or protecting that server, paying all costs for it. And what do you know? It's a Corp version of Haley, or you could also say it's Shipment from Mirror Morph turned into an ID. But this is pretty cool, actually. Like, the more I think about this ID, the more I like it. It's definitely a lot of click compression. That's the whole point, is you just save clicks by installing a bunch of things at once. However, because you have to install stuff in the same server as the first thing, this cannot be turned into an asset spam abusing ID where you just barf out a billion assets. I think what this is going to end up doing is it's going to become like the new version of Next Division, so the next division, if you will, because this should be really good at setting up your board state really, really fast, and also like being able to rush and fast advance things very quickly. I think the biggest bonus to this ID's power is not so much the ability itself, but that there's several cards out right now that synchronize with it very well. So you've got things like Bioroid Work Crew, Lateral Growth, Advanced Assembly Lines. Those are all really good includes for this deck. So I'm not thinking it's going to be top tier or anything, but there should be a solid, enjoyable deck with this ID, with some kind of like rush or maybe mid-range strategy, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. So yeah, I like this one. After that, we've got a new 5/3 for HB. This is Okawa Project. It says, as an additional cost to steal it, you have to spend a click and 2 credits. And that's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It fits in line with HB, and I think we all know that it's been proven many a time in Netrunner that 5/3s need to be defensive to be considered playable, or or have some ridiculously powerful ability on them, but mostly they have to be defensive. And this is something. In most cases, like a click and 2 credits is a pretty small tax to steal a 5/3, but obviously this is specifically meant to be used in click denial decks. So putting this in a deck that has like Enhanced Login Protocol and Ash and Strongbox and Mason Bellamy, that's obviously where this card goes to make that extra click unpayable. So you just can't steal it at all. Like that's where this card goes. Outside of that, I'm not seeing a lot of use for this, but in that deck, this is a much needed piece. So hey. After that, we've got a new piece of ice for HB. This is Nadja 1.0. It's a barrier bioroid, and it's got 2 Durez, 2 Strength, 2 Subs, 2 Influence, 2 J's in the name, so a whole lot of 2s. But it's 2 in the runs, and you can click to break it. So what we've got here is a baby Eli, basically. That is pretty much what it is. It's a cheaper to res but lower strength Eli, and I don't know how else to explain this to you. That's what it is. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it costs 2 to res and it's 2 to break with paperclip, so that's solid. If they click to break it, especially more than once, that's definitely good for you. So this is obviously not something you put on a scoring remote, but it's not bad. If you put this in Stronger together, it's the closest you're ever going to get to have an Eli 1.0 back, so it's not terrible. So to start off the Genotyping cards, we've got a very interesting new include. This is Gene Splicer. It's an asset, 2 to res, 1 to trash, 2 influence. It can be advanced. When the runner accesses it, do 1 net damage for each advancement token on it, and then click 3 tokens, add it to your score area as an agenda worth 1 agenda point. So, while at first glance you might think this is just another Genotyping trap to motion out and try to get people to run into, it's actually a lot more important than that, because the big thing about playing Genotyping traps is that if the runner doesn't run them, they just sit there and don't do anything. So the best kind of traps are ones that you can still get use out of even if the runner doesn't run into them, and that's exactly what this is. This is something that if the runner hits it, is good for the corp, and if the runner doesn't hit it and avoids it altogether, it's still good for the corp. And that's a very powerful thing to have in a Genotyping deck. Now obviously, this is a huge Mushin bait card. That's you play this in a Mushin deck, like period. And if you do that, because you're not technically scoring it, you can Mushin it out and score it as an agenda point in the same turn. And that's pretty strong. So I'm not sure exactly what this will do to like mess with the meta of Genotyping decks, but this will be a card that you will see in at least like a PE deck somewhere or something like that. Like this will see play in anyone who likes Mushin decks will use this card. This is definitely a very strong include for those. After that, we've got a new Trap Ice. This is Maganga. It's 1 to res, it's 3 strength, it's 2 influence, it's pure trap, so no regular subtype, and has 1 subroutine. You and the runner play a side game. If you win the side game, you do 2 net damage, otherwise do 1 net damage, and then trash it. You trash it either way. So this is just Data Mine 2.0. Like that's what it is. Like, whatever you thought about Data Mine, it's that, but better. So take that as you will. It's Datamine 2.0. After that, we've got Genotyping, which is a 1-to-play, 2-influence operation. It says trash the top 2 cards of R&D, then shuffle up to 4 cards from archives back into R&D, remove it from the game instead of trashing it. So it's a Jinteki Jackson. That's what this is. This is Jinteki's specialized replacement for Jackson Howard. But, well, that is nice to have, and it's not bad. How does this compare to preemptive action? And that's... preemptive action is probably still better 9 times out of 10. Because the thing is, well, you get to shuffle 4 cards back in, sure, that's more than 3, but you have to mill 2 first, which means you're only getting a net gain of 2 cards back into your deck. No matter what you do, you're only getting a net gain of 2 cards back, so it's less back into your deck than with preemptive action. Now, if you get 4 cards that you really want into your deck and mill 2 that you don't need, it's better. And if you mill something that you want in your heap, like, you know, a Breach Dome or an Obokata you're not rushing to score out right now, then it's pretty good. But you have to, in order for this to be as good as preemptive action, you basically have to mill at least 1 card that you don't care if it's in archives. And that's not something you're going to consistently get. You know, even if you dump a bunch of them into your deck, that's not something you're going to regularly get. So, plus, I know if you use this, there's going to be a bunch of times when you are like trying to get a certain card, like you need money or something, and then you play this, and the first thing you mill is like a hedge fund, you know, and then you have to shuffle it randomly back into your deck instead of getting to play it, and that's going to be super irritating when that happens. So, I mean, it's not bad. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but I think I'm probably going to stick with preemptive action most of the time. But hey, maybe there's somewhere that you can get this to work where it's just as good as preemptive, if not better. But it's a good try. It's a good try. And now for the yellow cards, we have Echo Chamber. This is a 4-to-res, 1-to-trash asset. It's a whopping 4 influence. And it just says 3 clicks, add it to your score area as an agenda worth 1 agenda point. So this is a cheeky way for asset spam decks to sneak out points to punish you for not checking every single thing they put down. That's what it is. It annoys the crap out of me, and I'm sure it serves a purpose, but this card still irritates me. So I'm just going to leave it at that. It's not a bad card. It serves a purpose, but it's going to be one of those things that people score it for their 7th point. You're just going to be like, acid spam, and just convulse into a frothing heap on the ground. After that, we've got something a little more interesting. This is a Operation Self-Growth Program. It's free to play, and it's 3 influence. And it says, play only if the runner is tagged, and add 2 installed runner cards back to their hand. And I feel like a lot of people will just brush this off as like another, you know, not effective enough version of tag punishment. You know, it's when compared to just like killing people or using closed accounts or something like that. But I think this has it has a niche that it's only going to apply in that niche, but it could definitely be worth considering because the big single tag punishment cards are exchange of information and closed accounts. Like those are and all seeing eye. But those are the big go-to like 1 tag punishment cards. And you might think, well, why play this card when you could play any of those? And I think the card that this might actually replace is closed accounts. Because if the runner has, situationally, if the runner has a bunch of money and you can closed accounts them, then that's better. That's fantastic. But realistically, when does the runner end their turn with tags if they know what they're doing and if they're not poor? Like, they can end their turn with tags because they just screwed up really bad, but a good player is probably not going to end their turn with tags unless they, get hard-hitting newsed or something like that, which means they're probably not very rich to begin with. So in that case, when a runner ends their turn tagged, or if they're just going tag me, of course, and they're not rich enough for closed accounts to have good value, this would actually be a way better option, because if they're poor and you bounce like 2 of their breakers back or their console or something expensive like that, now they're poor and they have to reinstall a bunch of things. So you're at like 3 credits, but now you have to reinstall your Gordian blade and your paperclip. Like, that's a huge setback. Like, that's just as bad as just being knocked down to 0 credits. And if even better, if you can play both cards in the same deck and ideally closed account someone and then self-growth program them, you can just, that will guarantee you an agenda score pretty much. Like, that's such a massive setback for the runner. There's no way you can't score an agenda after that. So I think this might get passed over a little too quickly. I think this really goes hand in hand with, or is a comparable card with, closed accounts. So it's a niche card, but I think it does have a home somewhere. After that, we've got what is far and away the most important NBN card in this pack. This is Calibration Testing. It's an upgrade. I believe Offsite is a new subtype. I don't think I've seen that before. But it's 3 to res, it's 2 to trash. It's a cutoff in the picture, but I'm told it's 3 influence. It says install only in a remote server and trash it, place 1 advancement token on a card in this server. And this is NBN's new signature fast advance tool. That's what this is, that's what you're looking at. And it's a very, very important thing for NBN to have, because fast advance was obviously one of NBN's big signature things they did, and after rotation they lost an awful lot of things that do that. No AstroScript, no San. They lost a lot of things that let them do fast advance, one of their signature tools. So as the Kitara Cycle promised, here are new ways to do those things that got taken away by rotation. And this is a pretty solid card to do that with. It actually is. Like, it's basically a one-shot San. Like, that's the best way to describe this. This is a one-shot San City grid. So you can pop this to place an advancement token on something, fast advance it out, but then this is gone. It doesn't just sit there forever and let you fast advance everything you touch out of hand, and cost a ridiculous amount of money for the runner to go trash and yada yada. So this is a much healthier version of San. So I'm okay with this. I'm very okay with this card. Plus, if the runner manages to find it out of the hand or the deck or wherever, it's only 2 to trash. So this is, I like where they're going with this. NBN gets the fast advance tool that they've been missing, that they wanted back, so that makes yellow players happy, and the rest of us don't have to deal with stupid crap like San anymore. This is a much healthier, more positive version of that card. So I'm totally okay with this. And in case you were planning on putting this in something like Builder of Nations, you can only place advancement tokens on a card in the server, not in an ice protecting the server. So that's not going to work. This is purely for advancing agendas. Now for the good old Wayland cards. This is Urban Renewal. It is a 1 to res, 3 to trash, 4 influence asset. It says place 3 power counters on it when it's rezzed. When there are no power counters left on it, trash it and do 4 meat damage to the runner. When your turn begins, remove a power counter from it. So this is a damage version of public support. Like, that's pretty much copy paste what this is. This is a damage based version of public support, and it's not bad. It's not bad. You put this down, and it says, 3 turns from now you will get scorched if you do not come in here and trash this. So it definitely puts pressure on the runner to take action and not just sit back and set up. It's important to note that because the runner sees this coming like that, you're never going to kill the runner with it. It's just meant to slow them down tempo-wise rather than actually end the game. So if the runner can't find a way to deal with this, they're just going to get set back, which you're not going to be able to kill them with this. The other thing to note about it, though, is that because it doesn't actually advance your win condition, it doesn't give you points like public support does. It just pisses off the runner, but it is not actually helping the corp win the game. So if you make a deck based around this, it's just going to be like if this is your main plan of the deck to try to recur this a bunch or something, like you're just going to annoy the runner for a while, but you're not actually going to win. Eventually they'll just run you over because you're not scoring, you're not killing them, you're just kind of sitting there being obnoxious. So this is something you would put like as an extra side, as like an extra side thing in a deck meant to do something else. And because it's an asset, it's probably going to be in an asset spam deck. If you do that, then or maybe you could put it in like a mid-range deck, kind of like how HB puts down campaigns while they're waiting to get agendas. But then, of course, like you're not really getting money during that time. So I don't know, but I think the obvious home for this is in Gagarin, because that's like the only real asset-based Wayland ID. So this is very much a Gagarin card, which I'm sure is going to get tested out in Gagarin decks a lot, and I'm sure it's going to piss us all right the hell off, because asset spam, slapping these behind frickin', 15 sub-tour guides and whatnot, I'm sure that's going to irritate the crap out of all of us. But outside of Gagarin, I'm not seeing a lot of play for this. So this is basically a Gagarin card. And I'm sure Gagarin players are going to love that, and I'm sure the rest of us are all going to hate it, but I'm not mad that it exists. So it's definitely a new Wayland card that promotes Wayland's, super aggressive play style. Now, after that, we've got what is definitely my favorite Wayland card in this pack. This is Wake Up Call. It is a 1-to-play operation, it's 3 influence, it's a reprisal subtype, which I'm pretty sure is new. It says, play only if the runner trashed at least 1 corp card during their last turn. Choose an installed piece of hardware or non-virtual resource. The runner must either trash that card or take 4 meat damage, and then you remove it from the game instead of trashing it. And this is a very, very Wayland flavor card. Like, this is a very good card to just demonstrate the mentality of Wayland. In that, in the flavor of the game, I think Wayland is very much like playing against them is like poking the dragon, so to speak. Like, they don't typically deliberately go after you to hurt you, but if you mess with them, they will retaliate hard. So this is a very, very mean card to do that with. I mean, we all know getting scorched is not fun, and getting your stuff blown up is not fun. But the big thing to take note of about this card is that you might initially think that it's too situational, but this plays off any trash. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't have to be installed. It doesn't have to be if paying a trash cost. Any time that the runner trashes any corp guard in any way, you can play this and hit them back. Now, hardware is a little situational, although everyone plays consoles. So by mid to late game, you will almost certainly have a console to target with this. And let's not kid ourselves, resources are everywhere. So it is a little situational based on the runner's board state, because if you use this to blow up a half-drained daily cast, that's not much, but we all know there are a lot of runner decks with some very important resources that they like to keep out, and as I said before, consoles are super important. But I think What you might not realize is just how mean you can design your deck to make this card be. Because it works off any trash, you can go old school. You can put snares in your Wayland deck, like people used to do way back when, and if the runner hits a snare and trashes the snare, you can then play this on them after that, which is super mean. Like, that is just evil. And because they just hit a snare, there's a very high chance they don't have 4 damage to take, so you can just like nuke their console on top of that. Like, that is a mean combo, and I absolutely cannot wait to do it to people. Other points about this card is that combined with the previous card, this is also a really, really obnoxious Gagarin card where you can make people go run your Urban Renewal, and then they trash it, but then because they trash it, you get to wake up call them, and it's like you trashed it to avoid 4 meat damage, but now you have to try to avoid 4 meat damage again, so it's like a lose-lose situation for the runner. I'm sure that's really obnoxious, but remember, it is meat damage. There are meat damage prevention cards in the game, so I mean, Plascrete is gone, but we've still got things like Jargonom Mercs, or if this plus Urban Renewal becomes like prevalent enough, don't forget Guru Dave still exists. Like for both countering this and Urban Renewal, Guru Devaner just says the runner has to pay 4 credits instead of having to deal with whatever these cards normally do. So Guru Dave is a good counter to both of these cards. There's also the point that this card is very, very likely specifically meant to counter the upcoming Friday Chip Imp combo, which that's supposed to come out in the 3rd pack, so we don't have it yet, but that combo is going to be super powerful, and this is very likely specifically meant to shut off the Imp Friday Chip combo, because you use the combo to trash something, and then you can immediately play this and blow up Friday Chip, which is a hardware. So you make the runner choose either take 4 damage or lose your combo. So, but this is a very mean, very Wayland flavor card, and I really like it. There's some really nasty things you can do with this. It's definitely a boost to Wayland's strength and Wayland's playstyle. So I'm all for this card. Alright, and last up we've got Reconstruction Contract. This is a 1-to-res, 4-to-trash, 4-influence asset. Whenever the runner suffers any amount of meat damage, you may place 1 advancement token on it. Then trash it, move any number of advancement tokens from it to a card that can be advanced. And this is... I don't know what to feel about this card. Like, I like how it's designed. I actually do kind of like how it's designed and what it does. It's a unique, interesting card, but I think the vast majority of people are just going to pass it over because there's just not many places where it actually fits or actually does much. The big issue being that it only it's an asset, so you have to protect it. B, it only triggers off meat damage. And meat damage typically comes in big fat chunks, not constant pings over and over again that would build up counters on this. However, the one place I think this card might find a home is in Builder of Nations, because Builder of Nations does pings of meat damage over and over again. And you might think, well, you got to sit there and protect this while it gets like 4 or 5 counters on it. It's like, no, you don't need to do that. With even 1 or 2 counters on this, it does something useful. You might think, well, you can just use it to advance ice, but you can put a counter on any card that can be advanced. So in Builder of Nations, this becomes a fast advance tool. So think about that. If your Builder of Nations, if you have this out and your Builder of Nations ID procs at any point while this is out, this is basically the same thing as calibration testing. So this could be something that helps make some really weird, like, Builder of Nations fast advance deck or something like that. Because with even 1 counter on it, it becomes this effectively the same thing as calibration testing, but with better resin trash numbers. There's also the fact, I mean, yeah, you can just use it to res ice, but there's also the fact that because it has the trash can ability on it, as long as it's behind like even a single piece of advanced ice, even if the runner goes to trash it, you will still get some kind of use out of it, because if they put it behind an ice wall or something with one advanced token on it, they run to go trash it, they take a meat damage, then before they can trash it, you just pop it to put that counter on something. So like this doesn't need to be super heavily defended and stay out forever. If you have it behind if you have it in Builder of Nations behind one advanced piece of ice, you will always get some amount of use out of it. Now, granted, like one advanced token isn't much, but I think it's not a super strong card, but it is an interesting card. I do like it. I do like what it does. I like the design, and maybe you could get something out of it in Builder of Nations. Other than that, though, I'm not seeing it anywhere. And that is the first pack of the Kitara Cycle. This is the beginning of Boggs, shall we say, since this is the first pack that was designed primarily by him, if I understand that correctly. But I'm definitely interested in what the Kitara Cycle is going to bring us, though. This first pack was really nice. It had some very cool, very interesting takes on the card design, and I think we're in for some good stuff. I'm still terrified of the Friday Chip Imp combo. Like, that still is like, a monster looming on the horizon. We'll see what happens with that. But outside of that, this cycle looks really promising. So I'm really excited to see what Boggs' next batch of cards will bring for us. So yeah, Merry Christmas, thank you, and good night.